Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Toast to the Arts show, where we celebrate books, music, visual, and the performing arts. Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Feast of Words show on our Toast to the Arts podcast channel. We're featuring 4 episodes focusing on debut novels. You're going to hear from 4 authors on each episode talking about their writing and the novel, and they're going to give us a short reading. This is part 1, and we're kicking it off with The Leading Ladies. We have 4 women authors talking about their debut novel, and we're starting it off with Melora Fern and her novel, Whistling Women and Crowing Hens. Next, Robin Merle talks about her debut novel, A Dangerous Friendship. Then Linda Ballou chats about her debut novel, Wai-Nani, A Voice from Old Hawaii. We close the show with Marty Eberhardt, who talks about her novel, Death in a Desert Garden. Enjoy. Well, you can't go wrong with a title that's called Whistling Women and Crowing Hens. That is the title of the debut novel by Melora Fern, and I encourage you to go to her website, melorafern.com. The link is in the episode notes. But welcome, Melora. How are you?
I am great, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here.
Well, Whistling Women, I want to know about this whistling because this is like a traditional thing that goes back a few generations for us, right?
Right, that's right. This musical whistling, which is like someone whistling a solo instead of a violin with a band or an orchestra. And it was very popular at the turn of the century and became even more popular in the 1920s and 30s.
Wow. And
Yeah.
there are still musicians and singers doing this, you know?
Yeah, yes, very much. And there's actually an international musical whistling contest, and I was out there in LA just a week ago. And there were different people competing on different levels, all ages from all over the world. It was so interesting.
Wow. Wow. You know, because I'm a musician and singer as well. And then there's songs like Whistle from Here to Here. And I always when What a Day for a Daydream song, they have that whole whistling part. And I'm like, how do they do that without getting the giggles? Because it is funny. I don't think I could do it. You know, you just start blowing air and everybody looks at you like, you know, but I can whistle through my tongue. If I roll my tongue, I can whistle through that. It's weird.
That's a cool way to whistle. That's a different way.
It's weird. I don't know. It's, you know, as kids, we start to learn that we have a tongue and a mouth and we start making all the faces. Apparently that was mine, one of the many. So tell us about this because from what I've heard, you were in the world of bookkeeping and CPA, taxes, all that stuff that, man, you do need a release if you do.
That's true. Yeah, I've always been a big reader, but never thought I'd be a writer. And here I am at 65 with my debut novel. So
Good
it's
for
pretty
you.
exciting.
That's awesome. But tell everyone how this story came to be because I think this is just so cool.
Yes, I was cleaning out, helping my parents clean out, and I found this blue and white striped box that my mom had saved. And my dad was in the Navy, so they moved everywhere. And this box had moved everywhere with him, but I'd never seen it. And in it was a whole lot of family stuff, but a whole folder about my grandmother, who was a musical whistler, and she traveled with the Chautauqua circuit back in 1926 through 28. And she whistled as part of her performance. And I had no idea what Chautauqua was or anything about musical whistling. I did know my grandmother whistled because I have a fond memory. She passed when I was 8, but I do have a very fond memory of her whistling bird calls, and they would come closer to her like in conversation without any breadcrumbs or anything. I really believed she was Snow White.
That's amazing. Well, you bring up Chautauqua. The first time I heard about it was we were doing an interview on Northeast Colorado, and they have a Chautauqua circuit. They're part of that. And I'm going, I can't even pronounce it. What is this? What is this? So please tell for those of us who are new to this big word that is fun to try to learn to pronounce what that is.
Okay. It's actually a Native American word, but that means 2 moccasins tied together. but it's been now appropriated to mean these traveling road shows and entertainment centers that were part of the turn of the 20th century. And it started upstate New York, and it's still there today, the Chautauqua Institute. And that's like an education travel destination. But then certain towns decided to have their own Chautauquas where they educated people and brought in highbrow music and theater. And then the next step were these Chautauqua circuits, and there were over 1,000 of them all over the United States and up into Canada. And the whole goal was to bring education, highbrow music, theater to rural America. And it's considered the forerunner of TED Talks of today.
Wow. Okay.
It's
And
just
whistling is part of
fascinating.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and musical whistlers were part of the highbrow music. Yeah, they always opened with a musical act, and then they'd have a lecturer, mostly men, but sometimes women. And then the next day they would open with a musical act and they would have a theater or something. So they went from 3 to 5 days, and the whole town and all around would quit farming or quit doing whatever, and they would come to these performances.
This is so fascinating to me because it's a performance, but then it's also storytelling. And so when you
Right.
think about our indigenous, people of here, like storytelling, and that's how history and myths and legends and lessons, life lessons got passed down through
That's so
generation
true.
after generation. And so, and that's something, around the world, how it was done. So then it also reminds me of the importance of how radio was. Radio was an oral thing that was our first form of entertainment in our homes, other than
Yeah.
our family passing down the storytelling or someone playing the piano or the flute or guitar or something. So this really kind of gets us back to how this all happened. It's cool.
Yeah. No, I think that's what happened to me when I read about this and realized my grandmother had been a part of it. I was just so fascinated. And at first I wanted to tell her story, but she was no longer around for me to ask questions. My mom had Alzheimer's. She couldn't answer. So pivoted and said, I need to write a story. And it started out a really bad short story because I'm a CPA. I have no training in creative
All right.
writing. So I went to a workshop and I just figured out, okay, if I'm going to get this story told, and by then there were characters living in my head that when I would go on walks, we'd have
Oh,
these.
yeah.
Yes. So I
Mhm.
said, I've got to learn how to be a better writer. And I took several online writing courses, went to different workshops, and joined a writer's critique group that I'm still involved with today. And through all that help, I became a much better writer and edit, edit, edit.
Well, this kind of, in a way, does it kind of connect to being a CPA too? Because you're used to a very kind of solitary way of working, quiet, and then having to be analytical too, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and creative, because I
Yeah.
always say that in the world of finance, creativity is king.
I agree. I think we all have both sides of our brains working, but I probably am one of the few authors who makes character spreadsheets rather than
Do you
character
really?
sheets. Yeah, because it's just the way my mind works in columns and rows.
She's a computer with creativity. There it is. I love this. For you to think, oh, I'm going to write a novel, that's pretty amazing. And I have a friend, Erin Youngless. She's a writer and she's a genealogist, and she's doing a whole thing on this. She says, no, family history leads to novel writing. I'm like, what? She goes, oh, yes, it does. And so I think you fit that bill. I'm
Yeah.
going to have to connect you both on
Yeah, that
this.
would be fun. Because I do believe there's so many stories in all our histories, and they're often things about our American or own country's history that we don't know from textbooks, but they're really influential and a big part of all our lives. Like the Chautauquas, they reached millions of people, so they in some indirect way they're a part of our lives.
I love this. This is so cool. So then you decide to write a story. It's based on family history, based on truth. We all want that nugget of truth, right? And I think
Right.
that's it. Even when we do all these interviews with authors, I'm always like, okay, what was the nugget of truth in there? Something spurred something somewhere, right?
Yep,
But then
that's so
you're
true.
creating this story. So please give no spoilers, an overview. And congratulations, by the way, your first
Thank
book.
you.
I mean,
I feel so fortunate.
did you eat cake when it came out?
Oh my gosh, I was running around my house holding the book.
That's
I was so
awesome.
excited. Yeah. And
Yeah,
it
that's
took me
huge.
8 years, so it's not like it just happened. And I spent almost a year querying agents and small presses. So, it's not like it took a lot of perseverance, and there wouldn't be a novel without my writer's critique group. They really helped me hone in to make it a strong written novel.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you have to kind of get thick-skinned on all of that,
Yes.
right?
You have to have a very thick skin.
Especially when it does come from a family history background. Does that make it a little harder too?
Yes. Yeah, no, you're so what a great observation because the first draft was so much of my grandmother, and my writer's critique group was like, "Okay, are you writing your grandmother's story or are you writing a fictionalized version?" And I had to separate that my grandma's name is Verna, that Birdie was not Verna. And once I could admit that and own that, then the writing got so much better because clinging to who my grandmother was kind of muddled it more. And my protagonist goes on a whole different journey than my grandmother did. So I had to let go of that. And there's still little nods to her and my mom, little sayings or where they lived, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
it's its own story, just sparked from the family history.
I think that's hard because you want to honor them in some way, and then it makes it kind of cramps your style, like your cramps your
Right.
creativity. It's too like,
Right.
let me be free. And the name's Birdie, you want to fly.
That's exactly right. Yeah, birds are all throughout the book because musical whistlers often started out mimicking bird calls. My grandmother could do over 50 individual separate bird calls.
Well, yeah, that is, and for bird watchers, they're listeners first before they watch,
Right.
and I'm all into that. I'm big into birds and plants and animals and all that. And also when it comes to music, I mean, music is inspired by nature, right? And
Right.
so birds are your first thing. And when you go back into our indigenous history too, so Native American flutes, the first one you learn to play is the woodpecker. And then it
Okay.
graduates from there and there and there. But the woodpecker is your beginning. And then the different flutes go according to bird sounds. And then
That's
they
so
have bird
cool.
songs. There's different bird callers, bird song. And it's often there, it's almost like an ocarina instrument where there's whistling. And some have an instrument, some do not. And it all depends on the different tribe. And some I'm sorry, I'm not the expert, but generally
Yeah.
speaking, there's the bird song, there's bird dancers, so it's,
Yeah.
and that's not just this country,
No, I
so,
think you're right, it's everywhere. It's so
uh
interesting you say that because I had one workshop leader when I wrote a scene that Birdie was listening to birds as she walked from the train station to where they were staying, and he's like, "Nobody listens to birds." I was like, "Wait, what? Everybody hears birds," like, and everyone in the workshop were like, "Yeah, we hear birds in the
wake
morning,"
up
and
to
it just
bird calls. That's my
yes,
thing. And if
yes.
I'm in a place and I don't hear birds, I'm like, the apocalypse has happened. The end of the world has happened. No,
But
the
the
birds
next
are
day, he
everything.
did tell me he heard the birds at where we were staying. He goes, "I actually heard birds today."
Well,
Oh
I
my
know that
god.
you moved to North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
And we travel where you are a lot, and we're on the road full time. And so we were based in Tucson, and we were so used to the doves, the big white-winged doves, and doves were everything. I have to tell you, when we see a dove and we're back east in North Carolina, that region, we're like, oh, it's a dove. It's a dove. And people look at us like we're absolutely bonkers because it's a dove and we get all excited. And it's like the woodpeckers and the doves and the blue jays, and those
Yeah.
three are the monkeys of the forest. They are. And
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, I could talk birds and
I
that.
could too. We
So,
we could
so
go
that
on and
dude
on.
was wrong. And you have to see now, then as a writer, you have to learn to say no to the educators at times, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oof.
They might have more experience in some area, but you also have to stay true to who you are and your voice and your story. There's a fine line between taking criticism and making changes and not taking criticism and sticking to what you know.
Wow, this is fun. Okay, you've got to give everyone an overview. There's birds and a birdie in this. There's travel, right? And so yeah, give everyone an overview. I'm not going to interrupt, I promise.
Okay, so my story is set in the 90s, and it's about a young, naive woman who is escaping her overbearing older sister, Lydia. And the young woman's name is Bertha, but her nickname is Birdie. And the way she escapes is by auditioning and joining the Chautauqua circuit. And she becomes part of the Versatile Quintet, which is 5 women who are the opening act of the opening day of every Chautauqua that they go to. So throughout the summer, she and these 4 other women are traveling by train, because that was the way they traveled back then, from town to town. And there's adventures along the way. And she learns a lot about herself and kind of finds her voice and finds her wings through these friends who are modern women in the 90s. And there's 2 love interests that she has to kind of figure out who she is and who she likes and all that sort of thing. So I won't say any more because I don't want to give it away.
So this is kind of a road trip
Yes, definitely a road
read.
trip. The train is definitely almost a character in the book.
And shenanigans happens on trains.
Yes, they do.
And then you're stuck with the same people. So that's an interesting thing too, because she
Yeah.
wants to get away from her older sister, and there's going to be someone on that train. She's like, no.
Yeah.
Right.
And 5 women traveling together, there's going to be drama, right?
And they have to perform together.
Yes.
That's the only time they get to get along. That's like
Yes.
Fleetwood Mac, it sounds like.
I love Fleetwood Mac.
I do too. It was the drama that created
Oh,
such good music. And on stage, it was like, all right, I hate you, but we'll get this song, I don't think hate.
Right.
Well, I think there was some heavy
Yeah.
fuel drama there. Let's just put it that way. Hate's a big word, but this is fun. This is fun. Now, the
Yeah.
painting behind you feels bird-like too.
Oh, yeah, I don't know, it's
Yes.
by, I used to volunteer at a nonprofit that helped marginalized youth, and it's by one of the students.
Wow. It's got
Love
a
it.
movement. Yeah.
Yes, I think
It's got
it's
birds in there.
wonderful. Yeah,
It's
I
got
think
the
so
bird
too,
movement.
somewhere in
Yeah.
there.
Well, you didn't know you were going to talk about art on the podcast, but I do love the front cover of your book too. And
I know.
isn't that huge about a book is what does your cover do to get the reader? But that tells you right there and then that birds are involved, the era it's involved, and gives the feel. So
Yes.
yeah,
I
putting
know,
that
I
cover
was so
together.
delighted with the cover. The artist, she's part of Sublime Press who published the book, Alicia, and she really heard what I wanted. It was very important for me to have the protagonist facing the reader because a lot of historic fiction, it's a silhouette or the back of a woman. And I was like, I can't have that. This is a story
She's a
about a woman
performer.
finding her voice, and she's a
Yeah.
performer, and she needs to be looking pretty straightforward. I feel like she tied in the train, and she got the 2 birds, the barn swallow and the northern cardinal, that are a big part of the books. Yeah, I was so pleased.
Well, the cardinal is also a symbol of someone who's passed on coming to say hello.
Right, right.
Wow. All right, so we're just having a bird conversation today.
Can't
Kind of
not
like
have
your
it.
grandma. That's what I was thinking. It's like, that she's there. So
Yes.
that's cool.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. So I know you're going to read for us, right?
Yes, I will.
Ah, exciting.
Okay, so this is not right the beginning, but in the first chapter, but it introduces the 2 main characters. Helen tugged at Bertie's elbow. Hey, you. Oh, sorry, I got lost in my thoughts. Bertie scrunched her nose. Lydia complains that my mind wanders like a chicken in search of its head. It sounds like your sister and my aunt were raised together. Helen relaxed on a sunlit bench and patted the wooden slats in invitation. Nickel for those wandering thoughts? Bertie tucked her skirt under her legs as she eased onto the bench. A slight breeze freed strands loose from her bun. Well, Mount Gretna is where we first saw the 3-day Chautauqua circuit show, years ago. She tucked the wisp behind her ear. I was, dreaming of that stage. Atta girl. Helen clapped her on the back. Now let's hear one of your bird calls. Bertie scooted to the edge with her back straight. She detected a cardinal's chirp off in the distance. She wet her lips, puckered up, and whistled one of the northern cardinal's songs, a string of clear down-slurred notes ending in a trill. First, a red flash, then the male cardinal landed on a branch in a budding mulberry tree across from them. He echoed her call. Helen clapped her hands. Oh, do that again. Bertie whistled identical to his notes. The cardinal tilted his head and repeated his song. You are the bee's knees, Bertha. You match that bird in perfect pitch. A giggle bubbled up out before she could stop it. Please, call me Bertie. It's been my nickname forever. It's fitting. Gold flecks speckled in Helen's green eyes. Audition with me next week, Bertie.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. Now, what about an audiobook? How does that work?
So you like have ESP because I just found out yesterday from my publisher that Tandor picked up my book for an audiobook, and I got to listen to two different actors, professional actors read it. And it is so surreal to hear a professional actor read your written word. It's like unbelievable.
That is exciting. How are they going to do the bird calls?
I don't know if they're going to do the whistling or if they're just going to read it. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I should ask them that.
That's going to be interesting. I want to, it's exciting. And, the audiobooks are so important now.
I
mean,
agree.
it's really, I think we're at maybe a third to a half of the people listen more than read. I don't know.
Right. No, I think and it's so wonderful to have because not everyone has time to sit down and read or whatever, but they can listen to an audiobook in the car or while they're cleaning their house or walking or whatever. I'm so
exactly.
glad we have that. Yeah.
It's on a rise. I mean, it's like podcasting isn't going away and neither are those. How exciting. Now, are you going to do another novel? What's going on now?
I'm working on it. I pretty much just have an idea in my head. I'm still playing around with the characters. When I did I did a lot of research for this novel because obviously I didn't know anything about the 20s. And it was really important for me to be as accurate as possible. So the whole train schedule is based on a Chautauqua train schedule that I found in a library. And each town I would pull up maps and make sure I had the roads right for when they were walking to their boarding house or whatever. So in my research, I found out about Agnes Woodward, who is a real person who started a musical whistling school in Los Angeles, California in 1910. And she trained tons of young women to be professional whistlers, like with Chautauqua, or one of the women she trained was hired by Walt Disney, and she did all the whistling for the Disney movies. And it was just unheard of at that time for young women to have their own financial security with somewhat of a career. So I really want to take that and kind of run with that, but again, create some fictionalized characters and that kind of thing.
Love this. And I love on your website that people can click through and actually see your grandma's memorabilia, so that this is true. And looking at it, it was like, wow, that is this is keeping some women's history going.
Yep, which is so important. I think sometimes our stories don't get told, and it's time that they do.
No, I love this. This is a really good story of, women being able to be out there and doing things now. If you look at what's happening in the world of travel and tourism, a lot of women are solo travelers to the point that cruise ships are having to change how they do things to accommodate solo travelers. And majority of the solo travelers are women. And, 50 years ago, that was not the case. It was like, I know my mom, was a solo traveler and took me around, and it was like frowned upon in different societies, basically. It's like, where's your husband? Why aren't you doing this? And looked down upon. And so you think about back in the day, those days, a woman wanting to travel or get away or do something, you're going to have to be really innovative to be able to do it. Innovative enough to do the bird songs. That's amazing. Well, I think that's what the Andrews sisters did too. I think they did it the same kind of thing.
Same type of thing. Yeah, on their own. Yeah. Well, and it's the whole premise of my novel, the title at least, The Whistling Women and Crowing Hens. That comes from an American folk saying that was, whistling women and crowing hens never come to a good end. And the idea is that...
Oh, nice.
You can turn that saying on its head, that women do come to a good end.
Yeah, I think you're helping on that level. This is so cool. I love this. Well, congratulations again on your debut novel. I think more and more, doors are going to open for you doing this. And
thank you.
How
so
exciting.
Much.
And thanks for keeping women's history alive. Everyone, we're going to have to put this on our Women Making History podcast channel now too.
Okay.
Thanks so much. And everyone, again, The link is in the episode notes. You can go to melorafern.com. Thank you.
Thank you. This was such fun.
So I'm excited to have Robin Merle back on Big Blend Radio. She's an author, a coach, and a nonprofit strategist bridging purpose and prose. That is what a good title, huh? We first met her on the release of her award-winning nonfiction book, Involuntary Exit, A Woman's Guide to Thriving After Being Fired. And I'm just going to say, go get it now. The country needs this book. So we'll get her back on the show to talk about that. But today she is joining us to talk about her debut novel, A Dangerous Friendship. It is out now, and it has a music playlist that is linked in the episode notes as well as Robin's website. So welcome back. How are you, Robin?
Great. It's great to be with you again, Lisa.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's been a little while, right? So good to have you back. But I did not know you were going to get into writing a novel. Did you? Did you know you were going to do this?
Yes, because I actually started out as a fiction writer. And big secret, I wrote this book many years ago and put it on the shelf while I went out to earn a living. And my husband kept saying, you got to take that off the shelf. You got to get going on that. So I did. And I kept, revising and revising. So I'm actually a fiction writer at heart, but Involuntary Exit enabled me to tell a lot of stories as well as talk about what happens when you have an unplanned exit. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I think that's the important thing is storytelling. Fiction is definitely that, but nonfiction, I think that always gets over better if you have those stories that people can connect with,
Yeah. Well, the thread that I see between the two books is any kind of loss that sends a woman looking to reinvent herself or to figure out what she's going to do for the future. That gets me into storytelling. And whether it's part of nonfiction or fiction, I just love to really imagine and to see what do they do. They have a traumatic loss. What happens to them? And then tell the story about that.
Oh, man. So now let's talk about your debut novel. Okay, that gets it all started. A Dangerous Friendship. Okay, so we know that friendships, especially between women, can be pretty tight, real close, and then sometimes there's a uh-oh part. I think all friendships have that. But yeah, this is very interesting because it's about the women as well, right? So that's something that you're definitely focused on is women and empowering women, I'm going to say, with what you do. But this one gets a little twisty in there. I thought we were all angels, Robin.
Oh, I know you didn't think that, but yes. The thing is, the backdrop is the 1980s New York City, which was very wild and called the go-go. But the other thing that was happening then was there was a second wave of feminism. And I don't know if you remember, but they tried to pass the Equal Rights Amendment and it failed. But the idea was that the women, especially in this book, they're really struggling with trying to find a sense of power, a sense of independence. Tina is recently divorced and really lost her way. And she's attracted to Spike, who's a very enigmatic, beautiful, brilliant woman in Tina's eyes who is going to show her how she can have new power over her life, and over men. And so they really bond together. They're both aspiring writers. They come together and they decide they're going to rent a house, a cabin, actually in the rural backwoods where they can write out their souls and, be who they are. But what happens is actually completely different.
Now, going back to that time frame of the second feminism movement, well, there's been many, but at that time frame, I'm thinking back to the movies that were started throughout the 80s, right? And even late 70s, but things like 9 to 5, right? And there's there were corporate movies, and it was the time when you started to see women be more than a secretary, administrative professional now, but a secretary then who had to get the men coffee. Right. So even when you look at the series Mad Men, right, it's kind of I just kind of go to that era of change of women and we're still fighting for, women to get paid like the men. It's not over yet. That fight is not over. We keep getting 2 steps forward, 1 step back in all of it. Right. But that 80s time was when women started really getting into the corporate world and had to find their way of being strong and still pushing for equality. Yeah. we're still doing it. So this is timely.
Yeah, it's funny. Yes, it's funny how those themes come back to haunt us, but there was a lot of wealth at that time. There was a lot of wealth creation. There was a lot of anything is possible, at least in the city, and women being told they could have it all. Remember that? It seems like
Hmm.
such a cliched phrase. You can be an executive, you can be a powerhouse, you can be a mom, you can be anything you want. And so that's the backdrop of
Mm,
what fuels this friendship between
that's
these
amazing.
two women.
So now the two women, so one's looking at the other, you've got, let's just give them their names here so everybody knows who, who we're talking about. We've got Spike, and that's a good
Right.
name for her, right? She's the one that's
Yes.
been there, done that. And Tina is kind of looking up at her as a friend, but also a mentor, right?
Yes, yeah, and as a guide, and as somebody who's gonna draw her out of the life that she had, the one that she feels she failed at because she had a failed marriage, where she doesn't really know how to navigate those corridors of power and excitement in New York City, and Spike comes along with these fantastical, almost too fantastical stories about all the men that she's been with and all the escapades that she's done and all the
Naughty
things
girl.
that has made her so powerful. And one of the themes throughout the book is you don't know what's true and you don't know what's fiction because, as we know, when people are very good or they're pathologically good at not telling the truth, it always feels there's always something in there that's a nugget that you think, well, that must be true because, I
Mhm.
witnessed this person do that. But throughout, you really don't know because Spike is so out there in terms of her adventures that it's really possible that
Ah.
many of the things she describes has happened to her.
Now, did you see a lot of that in your career, throughout the years of women being like that? Because women also did kind of have that thing of using men to go up the ladder. I'm watching my words. We're on a writer's
Yes,
show
you
right
are
now.
once. Here's what I think. Like you, we've all witnessed and had friendships with girls, women throughout our lives that were always some were fantastic. They were the two women bonded, some were fraught, some were filled with a lot of other stuff. I mean, I know that's not very specific, but we know the archetype of the popular girl, the mean girl. We've never talked about the dangerous girl, the one that
Yes.
seems like it's okay, but then she leads you astray into places where you really, really shouldn't be.
Mm,
And so I think seeing all those different types of archetypes, whether they were in the corporate world or just in a social world, really made me think about what it's like when there are two best friends alone in a cabin. They each have their anxieties floating around there and they really want to get out there and cause some havoc, make a difference in
mhm.
their lives.
But when you're in a cabin in the backwoods kind of thing, reality starts to happen, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Reality starts to happen. It's not, they come from an urban environment and they go into an environment where people are these are where people live. This is their lives. And they end up meeting a lot of the local characters and getting involved in their stories. And in some ways that helps Tina, who's really looking for a new chapter, put her feet on the ground and say, wait a minute, life can be a little bit more solid than the kind of ephemeral promises that happen when
Mm,
you're in New York City of,
mm.
power, stardom, wealth, whatever. And it's really a nice juxtaposition between the local people and the community they have and these women who are like visitors from Mars in a way.
Right. Yeah, I understand that. And at the same time, for Tina, even if her friend Spike seems like outrageous in a way, right?
Yeah.
Then she's going to learn more about herself through that friendship, good and bad, you
Oh,
know?
she does. She does.
Mm,
Yes. Yeah. And
okay.
that's one of the you kind of don't know who to vote for by the end of the book, if you know what I
Oh,
mean.
wow. Okay. All right. Okay. I like this. I like this. So this is exciting. So are you going to read a little bit from there, from the book, so we can get a little taste of this? It's definitely sounds colorful. Everyone a dangerous friendship again is the book title, and yeah, give us a little taste.
Okay. All right. I'm going to read from the beginning when they're first getting to know each other. So in chapter 4, Tina says, "You can tell within the first few minutes if someone is going to be in your life," I told Spike during one of our late-night dialogues, much later during our time together. It was the reason I stepped back and closed the door when I first saw her on my porch at Tilly's. Exactly why she was sent, I didn't want to know. While I'm not a superstitious person, she did seem sent, as if the ripples in the lake finally calmed, and in the limpid pool I saw the reflection of everything I denied I was or could be. The messenger sat on my porch. She had long red hair. She brought me presents. The impulses in her eyes would drive me to my knees, scooping turds out of the toilet. The presents came later. My memory shies from evoking too much at once. It is too painful, too obvious, too sad, too much like one long shriek overwhelming the whispers, the deep laughter, the murmurings. Are you all right? Are you all right? Are you all right? Scenes bubble up. There is a scene in the summer right after I return from Tilly's bungalow colony. That was the writing colony. Spike is sitting on a warped stool in a sticky, big-screen bar on 23rd Street in the city, and it is the first time I've seen her after thinking I'd never see her again. I'm shocked. I'd remembered her all wrong. I'd muddied her features, and here they were, clearly defined, and not pretty, but handsome in a strong Germanic way. Any weariness was gone. I'd carried an image of her huddled in her black shawl on my bungalow porch as the night cooled, and an image of her talking too much and too fast in the bar in Portsmouth, turning her back on the attention she excited. And here she was, with a sunny tan, shorts, and a white tank top, looking as breezy and relaxed as if she'd just stepped off a sailboat after a light lunch of salads and fruits. She was laughing. Why was she laughing? A man wearing a suede cowboy hat with quail feathers in the band was fiddling with her shoe. Why was he doing that? Did she know him? Was I supposed to be friendly toward him? The shoe was in his hand, which kept rising and plunging because he kept rising and plunging with the pitch of God knows how much booze. In his other hand was a 9-inch gutting knife he was using like a razor on the sole of her shoe. My sandal broke, and this charming fellow has offered to fix it, Spike told me when I walked up to the bar. She laughed some more. This lovely lady requested my assistance, and as I am the only true hero left in this bar, who comes here promptly at 4 o'clock every day, I said I would oblige with my knife. He leaned closer to Spike. Which fascinates her. The bartender, a burly fellow whose nameplate read Mike, said, "Okay, Len, that's enough." And because Len went right on sputtering and swaying close to Spike's ear, Mike said it again. "That's enough, Len." "Enough of what? Enough of wit? Enough of chivalry? Enough of tits? You're out of here. Give her shoe." "Madam," he said to Spike, relinquishing the shoe. "An associate, madam," he said to me. "Blank you all." Yes.
Where did this come from? I always love this about, authors. Such sweet people, sweet and strong you, right? And then here comes, and then there's, women who are killing their husbands in books. I mean, what is it? There's this ulterior side. Does it feel good to write it? Do you enjoy?
Yeah, I do. I do enjoy writing it. Yeah. And there's a lot more, as you know, before we started, I was trying to find the different pieces to read, but this is one of them. And a lot of it is a lot of dialogue back and forth between the women that I really enjoyed because it's very funny, actually.
Yeah. Well, I like that because there's a lot going on in the headspace too.
Yes.
And how you manage to put it together is fantastic. That is, because I think it's hard to do dialogue. You've got to have a smoothness that goes with that, and a flow.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like our love of music. I hear them speaking, and the flow just continues. But this is something where to give more context to that piece, where they had met at a writer's colony and they had exchanged stories, and it was a really dilapidated writer's colony full of strange people. And then she and Spike meet up again in New York
Mm.
City at this bar. And it's the first time that she's seen her, but all the shenanigans seem to be the same when, people surround this woman, Spike.
It sounds fantastic. It'd make a good movie, it sounds like, too.
Yes, I think it would. I can see
Yeah.
I can see the film. I can. Yeah.
That would be fun. So, Robin, congratulations of your debut novel coming out. Tell everybody where they can get, The Dangerous Friendship, because it is a dangerous read. We like danger.
It is. Thank you. It's out on Amazon. It's at all your local bookstores. You can order it through the Simon & Schuster catalog, through the She Writes Press catalog. That's the publisher. And on my website, theprofessionalguide.com.
And you can get Involuntary Exit there, too. Just saying.
You can.
A lot of people listening to this right now may be thinking they need that, too. So it's a good package, and definitely makes a good gift for the holiday season, which is part of why we're doing this all in November. We want books for gifts for the holidays. So check that out. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure seeing you, Robin. It's been too long in between. So you got to get writing again,
Yeah. I have a third project in mind, so I'll do that.
I don't think you're ever going to stop. I love that. I love that. You take good care, and everyone, the links are in the episode notes as always. So we have travel writer and author Linda Ballou back on Big Blend Radio here, and we wanted to bring her on to talk about her debut novel, which is Wai-Nani, a voice from old Hawaii. And I'm going to even ask you what is Wai-Nani? Where did you get that name? So we're going to ask her about that. But first, Linda, you've written a number of Lost Angel adventures. These are your travel memoirs, right? So we've got that.
Right. Well, in Lost Angel Walkabout, there's a half a dozen stories set in the islands, by the way.
Yeah, you've got that. So you've done a lot on Hawaii. But how many novels? You've got 3 novels?
Yes.
Okay. And then how many books in total, do you think?
6. If you don't count, I've got a couple of ebooks that are not available in print, but 6 books.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So Wai-Nani, what led you to say, okay, I'm writing a novel?
Well, what happened was I lived on the North Shore of Kauai when I was young, and I became involved with the Hawaiian culture and the Hawaiian history, and I ran into a woman named Kahumana, who was the favorite wife of Kamehameha the Great, and these are the 2 best-loved icons in Hawaiian history. And I just fell in love with them and their story and the history and the culture and the beauty of the islands and all of it. After 20 years of going back and forth and doing a lot of research, which was just really a beautiful obsession for me, I felt I had to write my novel. And it was a bold move. It was my first novel, and, just daring to call myself an author.
Were you travel writing at the same time?
Actually, no, I didn't take up being a travel writer until after I went into the horse world for 10 years, and I was totally engaged in that for a while and really didn't do a lot of writing, but my first articles were published in horse magazines. And Wai-Nani, by the way, means spring water, fresh water. And I changed the names of the characters in the book because Hawaiian words are very confusing for Westerners, and I tried to create a book that Westerners could enjoy and still learn about the Hawaiian history. And I have a lot of the myths and the legends in there. And it's a poetic rendering of the people of old.
It's a beautiful story. I mean, it's got some points in there that, history and what's going on, but it's a beautiful read. And I remember reading it, and every time you're on the show, and everyone should know that you have a podcast with us, Lost Angel Travel Adventures podcast with us, that you can listen to every 3rd Wednesday here on Big Blend Radio at noon Pacific time, excuse me. And every time we talk about Wai-Nani, and I always go, okay, now I want to reread it. And that's the danger of this series right now. All the authors that I've known over the years coming on shows, and then they're talking about their debut novel, which is how a lot of times we've met them. I'm like, I got to go back and reread. I've got now this huge reading list that I don't think I'll ever get through, but Wai-Nani, I think, is a very special book.
Well, it is, and it's a love affair of the ages. I mean, their love affair went over 40 years of his rise to power, and I mean, it was just a golden age for the Hawaiian people, and I loved being there.
Isn't this one of your top-selling books, too?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, Wai-Nani is for sure. She's my proudest achievement. I mean, I'm proud of my other books. I mean, and I've done well with my other books. I've gotten good recognition, especially on Embracing the Wild, which particularly the first third of that book is set in the islands as well, because the main character, Isabella Bird, was there in 1873 and had a transformative experience in the islands. And so I'm big on the islands. I mean, I love the lifestyle, the culture, the people, and the history.
Awesome. Now, are you going to do a little reading for us?
Right. I'm going to read a little bit from Wai-Nani, and what this is she and Makaha are in Waipio Valley, which is the Valley of the Gods, where Hawaiians would take rest. They would have their holiday. So I think that this is appropriate for the time of the year. And I just want to read this now. Okay, so there's been a storm, a big storm, and Makaha has decided to go out in this treacherous surf, these 20-foot waves. And she's saying, don't go, but he is going. And so she decides to follow him into the surf. They were both wonderful wave sliders. They didn't call it surfing. So once beside Makaha, my thoughts of death ended. I followed him to the cold blue bowels of a roaring wave. I could feel the pull of Milu as he tried to take me to his kingdom. I fought with all my might to paddle up the curving breast of the beast that dwells in the ocean. The churning rage over my head was about to drop on me when I slipped just under its snarling lip. I turned to make the drop and felt myself falling into eternity. I hit hard, nearly toppling over in the heaving swell. I shuffled back and forth on my board to regain my balance. Before I knew what was happening, I was encircled by an ice-blue tube shot through with light. I was inside the belly of the whale. Many moments passed, which I was lost to all but the immense power shooting through the whorl of blue. It tired me out, and down the fence of the great wave, I turned my board up and rowed the crest to shore. When I emerged from the water, my aura flew off of me in a halo of sparkling light. Pinpricks of light shot off my fingertips and the soles of my feet as I walked on the hard-packed sand. The mystery of Moana, the grand and vibrant sea, could never be grasped and made to stay still, I reminded myself. All one could do is let it go and live in harmony with it. I was content to live that day and did not re-enter the surf with Makaha, who continued wave-sliding for many hours like a dolphin born to water. And when the gods tired of the storm, the skies cleared to sapphire blue and a three-colored rainbow burst over the valley. I took Makaha by the hand and led him up the canyon to the twin waterfalls. These two streams plunging from the sky into a secret pool were once forbidden lovers. Rather than be separated, the lovers jumped off the pali together into the pool at the bottom of the falls to meet their death together. The joined water flows from the stream to the sea and supports the taro fields, feeding the fishes and nurturing the land. Like these streams, our lives are forever bound, I told him. My brave Wainani. You are my never-fading flower, he said, rubbing my nose tenderly with his own. Your hard path is to be softened by the pure water of my love, I said. We held hands and turned to watch the silken tracks of the dying lovers.
Oh, man. Very cool, Miss Linda.
Like that one?
I do.
Well, it is a love story. It is a love story.
We need more love stories in life, I think. So it's a heartwarming love story.
It's
a little bit of
genuine,
romance.
And
is
by
good.
the way, she rocked her world and changed it forever. That was the other thing about Kahumanu. And she is today still revered and honored every year on Maui.
Well, everyone, you can go to lindabalooauthor.com to learn more about her. Her books are on Amazon, but if you go to her website, she may send it to you, the book, with a signature in it. And if it's the holiday season, I hear that you gift wrap them. Am I
do,
right?
absolutely. And you'll get my Wai-Nani's Wayfinder, which is a map I created of the sacred sites in the islands that I talk about in the book.
Well, thank you so much, Linda. We can't wait for our next episode together.
All right. Have a happy holiday.
Thank you. You too. Well, we're excited to have Marty Eberhardt join us back on Big Blend Radio here. She writes the Bee Rivers Botanical Garden Mystery Series. And I love this because I always think about, bodies being buried in the garden somewhere. And every time she comes on the show, that's what we talk about. Right, Marty? Welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me back.
Yeah, give everyone an overview of the series, because I don't think there's anybody else out there doing a garden mystery series, but specifically botanical gardens either.
Yeah, I think I might be the only one focusing on botanical gardens. So the protagonist in the first book is pretty much just a staff member, and then by the third book, which is coming out in February, she is actually the executive director. So she tends to gain more and more responsibility, but these things just keep happening. In the first book, someone, the founder of the garden, gets hit by a falling eucalyptus branch. In the second book, as you mentioned, it's called Bones in the Back 40. There are 40-year-old bones in the back of the garden. But in the third book, I took her to La Jolla, California, to a botanical garden conference where dreadful things also happen.
Wow. Now, have you been to the botanical gardens near La Jolla in Encinitas, California?
Yeah, but that's not... This is on the cliffs of La Jolla. So,
but the seals might eat you. There's sea lions out there. Well, I was going to say, because there was a crime committed in Encinitas Botanical Garden. And that's how they gained some media, splashes and got more visitors to the garden through this, because people were stealing the plants.
Yep.
People were after these, I think it was like a Japanese barrel cactus. Somebody stole.
That's interesting. I didn't know about that, but there was a big cycad robbery many years ago. So I threw some expensive cycads in this La Jolla garden.
They are expensive and they're awesome. We, I know this is off topic a little bit, but this happens whenever you come on the show. We hiked through a cycad forest in South Africa. Majaji. Did you go to Majaji?
Yes.
No way!
It's amazing to see them in the wild, isn't it?
That's how I feel when we go through the South and you go on a hike and there's magnolia trees. Just hear these beautiful hardwoods on a hike in their native habitat. And you're like, I remember the first time seeing a magnolia tree on a hike, and I about freaked out, and people didn't understand it, but I do. And the Majaji, though, has lived with me since I was a little girl, because there's all these spiritual beliefs in the tribe that lives there. And she was a queen. There was like the Majaji queen.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
We were canoeing, actually. We weren't hiking, but the same forest.
And all the mist. I remember the mist when we were there. It was, if you're going to write like a Southern fiction setting, that had it, a little bit of that in there. So, wow. All right. So we went to South Africa. When's your next novel coming out? The fourth one. I'm thinking,
I don't know. Then the next one is not gonna be a mystery. It's gonna be historical fiction. I'm going a completely different direction.
Wow. Well, you're allowed to,
Yeah.
You do what you want, So very cool. So yeah, and we should back up that you were also the executive director of the Botanical Gardens in Tucson, Arizona. And of course, Marty is one of our Tucson Sisters in Crime friends, and it's a great organization if you're into Tucson crime or anything to do with the desert or Arizona. So you can go to TucsonSistersInCrime.org. But yeah, Marty, what got you writing?
Well, what got me writing was I love to read. I've always loved to read, but I spent my life doing left brain stuff as a nonprofit professional and executive director, and, fundraising, grant writing, administration, personnel, all that left brain stuff. And when I finally retired, I was like, okay, right brain, what do I really enjoy doing that's right brain? And one of the things I enjoy most is writing, but I hadn't done much creative writing since I was like in my because I was just too busy. So I wondered if I could write a novel. And I thought, well, one thing I know a lot about is the inner workings of botanical gardens and nonprofit boards and all the
Well, there's always
dynamics.
someone on a board that you want to off, just
Right.
There's
not
These
into killing people.
all these dynamics between the staff and the board and the volunteers. And so I thought this situation is ripe for a murder mystery series. And also, I really love the Sonoran Desert. And so I wanted to bring some of my appreciation for the Sonoran Desert into the book so that people who don't know anything about it might understand that it's not just some hot, dry, boring place. So
Yeah.
that was another motivation.
So from plant to pen. This is I love that. And I think that's really true. The desert is so unique. I remember hiking with someone, they didn't realize like a fairy duster. I'm like, where's the flowers? I'm look at the fairy duster, little powder puff, plant. It is, trying to show like you got to look in a different way. And once you get it, it's just extraordinary. The web of life. And the Sonoran Desert has 5 seasons typically, if the weather gods are being nice, so to be able to, and then you've got all the prickly things that can, be painful to humans that you could
Yes,
utilize.
but with the most glorious flowers of any plants there. I mean, what is more beautiful than a hedgehog, a fuchsia-colored hedgehog cactus flower, or even prickly pears, incredible yellow blooms. I mean, these cactus just come up with the most amazingly, delicate, beautiful blooms.
I think what we loved about Tucson and about living there, and it's still our it's still our hometown there, is it does remind us of South Africa. Now that I know you've been there, I don't know if you were able while you were there to go to Namaqualand. There, it's up in the northwest part of the Cape and the Karoo Desert, when it has its wildflower season like Tucson does. They're very similar. And I encourage people, if you can go to see a desert bloom and then once every 5 to 7 years you get that big super bloom, it's so exciting. It is
Absolutely. Yeah.
just shows off,
It's
It's
transformation. It's total transformation. And you can't appreciate what you only truly appreciate it when you go through the hot, dry period.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and then you get rain and you get some flooding, but then wow, this is great. Well, Death in a Desert Garden was your very first novel. It came out October 5th, 2021, so not that long ago. But it also managed to win a bunch of awards. So how exciting is that? I mean, did you expect that for your debut?
I was really delighted. Yeah, that was really cool.
That is awesome. So, and people can still read it and get started in the series and get all 3. Yeah. Wow. All 3. The third one comes out in February, right?
February 20.
So tell us about B.
Well, B is a single parent. That's a lot of her identity in the first 2 books because she, is juggling like crazy. Work, job, children, single parent, not having family in town. And it's just a situation that so many people face. I can't tell you how many people have told me that they can relate to that part of the books. And I was really happy because I wanted to have a protagonist who wasn't just, they always in murder mysteries, the protagonists seem to be able to do whatever they want, whenever they want. And I wanted to make it so that she couldn't, because you can't. You have young children that are reliant upon you. And so it's another complication. So B is that she's a former teacher. She has gotten what she thinks is like the perfect job in a botanical garden because she's an outdoor person, and she really, and even though she doesn't make very much money, she still thinks it's a really great job, and except for that the garden doesn't have that much money, and maybe there's a little crisis brewing there in the first book. And also, it does turn to be not exactly the most peaceful place when the founder is hit by a falling eucalyptus branch.
Wow.
And it turns out that every single person on the board, and the staff, which isn't very big, seems to have a motive to have offed this woman who wasn't, the most pleasant personality.
Well, there you go. Someone gets off, So do you read other crime books or watch crime TV that led you into the crime world?
Well, I read everything by Agatha Christie when I was quite young. And, I have to say she's still my hero. I mean, she does this kind of mystery, which, the locked room mystery, the psychological, let's explore these people psychologically and figure out, from that aspect how it would have happened. Like, I don't do like a lot of analysis of different kinds of bullets and all that kind of stuff. Most of my books are like trying to figure out motivation.
So you're getting into the gossip.
Yeah,
the drama.
Yeah, absolutely. And B ends up, she's, kind of an easy person for some people to talk to, and people do seem to, let loose revelations to her.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So you going to read a little bit for us? 'Cause it's all that psychological side, just watching what everyone's, moves are, what they say, what they do,
Yeah. And of course, I have to throw in a lot of red herrings.
Well, yes.
So this is from page 2 of Death in a Desert Garden. B pulled open the heavy door where a brass plaque declared the building to be the Administration Center for Shanley Gardens. Angus had told her he'd laughed when he'd installed that plaque. It was such a grand name for Liz and Alan Shanley's former adobe home, which was the garden's only building beside the tool shed. Bea wished she'd known Alan Shanley. He'd clearly been an inspired gardener. But he'd died 5 years ago, in 2003, long before she'd started this job, and a year before his wife Liz had turned their home into a public garden. Bea did know Liz. By all reports, she'd left the property and headed for town as soon as Alan died. This didn't surprise Bea. Liz once told her she didn't care for gardening, which was a strange thing for a public garden founder to say, but Liz called the gardens Alan's thing. The local paper had enthused. Alan Shanley was ahead of his time. When other Tucson gardeners were trying to imitate the East Coast and Midwestern landscapes of their youth, Alan embraced the desert. Some of the plants he found from desert landscapes worldwide are now beautiful mature specimens, and his wife is turning this jewel over to the public. Liz didn't seem to care about the accolade she got for making the jewel public. It was wonderful that she'd made her longtime home a nonprofit botanical garden, except there wasn't quite enough money to pay the people needed to operate a fine public garden. We hoped they'd find some solutions to this rather crucial problem at the upcoming board staff retreat. Bea passed the volunteer, taking admissions fees in the hallway. He had a thick novel, which he bookmarked to greet Bea on her way in. Bea had advertised the admissions job as an opportunity for people who love to read. That should change when the garden started attracting more visitors. "I'm rereading Tolstoy," said the volunteer, a former English professor at the University of Arizona. "I don't suppose I'll get interrupted much in this weather."
Dear, what's about to change?
Hopefully they're going to get more money.
Yeah.
But that certainly won't be so peaceful.
And a little rain, maybe. Very
Yeah.
good. Well, Marty, thank you for being back on the show. Tell everyone again to watch out for, it's February, right, for the next one? So people can get, so I would say for the holiday season, get the first two, right?
Well,
So
thank you. Yeah.
for-
And the second one just won the 2025 New Mexico Book Award, by the way.
Very
So
cool.
that just happened like 3 weeks ago. It's set in Arizona and New Mexico. Yeah, she goes back and forth.
Why not? Two different deserts, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
High and
everyone,
lower.
yeah, exactly. And everyone, you can go to MartyEberhardt.com, and that is linked in the episode notes. Well, we'll have to speak with you in the new year with the new book.
Well, thanks, Lisa.
Thanks for listening to Big Blend Radio's Toast to the Art Show. Please keep up with us at bigblendradio.com and keep up with Big Blend magazines at blendradioandtv.com.